Started yet. It's just like the weirdness of the pre-service thing where I have to make sure that the streaming is actually working properly. Numbers tell me that it is. That's that's a good sign. Good Shabbos that those ones. No, it's a bizarre thing. Really bizarre thing. That's the thing about it, right? The people who are here have no sense of who's watching there, and the people who are watching there have no sense of who's here. The way the camera is set up, just so that you're all aware, it cuts off. That's basically exactly right. So if you really want to be on camera, front row is where you want to be. But if you're like me, towards the back, you're doing just fine. But we do have to actually wait until 7:30 exactly, because if we start early, then I'm going to get angry emails and confusion, Neil will come after me with a pitchfork. It'll be bad news. Just picturing him with a pitchfork makes me laugh. Yeah, no, the live streaming stuff will continue from now until the sun burns out, as far as I'm concerned. So the only thing that will vary about it is once we're back in the temple, then we're in our own space and we can try to figure out exactly how to, maneuver things the right way. But classes, board meetings, and anything that basically can and is appropriate to Zoom out would be appropriate to do that. There are some things where, it doesn't make sense to make it broadly public, but basically anybody in the membership would be able to have access to. And the high holidays are to anybody who wants. And, we're still, our hope is that we'll be able to be, in person for people who want to be in person with, appropriate vaccinations and what have you. But it's going to depend probably, because the next month, we hope things will stabilize and get better again. But, the way things are going right now, it's a bit of an if. It's a bit of an if. All the more reason why it's a good opportunity to remind about the masking indoors, even though it's something unusual or at other places to tell you, we're just trying to be on the extra cautious side if we can, especially right now. We don't want to, get all the way through the year and take any chances at the end of it. It just break my heart. So I know it's a little hard, but we try. I also know, by the way, that we're working on trying to figure out how to make this giant space feel a little bit smaller, which is not so easy. But, we appreciate just letting us know, like, feedback from how you hear things, how the volume is, all that stuff. While you may think normally that's not something you want to tell the rep, please do tell us, because without it, basically, we have no way of really knowing on our end of things. Everything that Lauren does sounds amazing. That's a given, right? We're doing fine. That's good. If Bonnie's saying it from the last row, that's a good sign, I think. I realize we have two Bonnies saying, but everybody say hello to Lauren's mother. This is other Bonnie. Bonnie here. That's good. It is 7:30. Thank you, Marcia. Very good. Keeping us on track. Excellent. Okay, I know I ask you this every week. We start with candles?
We do start with candles.
Okay, so we're going to start on page 120 with our candle blessing. I'm going to light the candles. The cantor will chant the blessing. You're welcome to join with her. Again, page 120. Easier than...
Yes. That's weird.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We'll turn now to page 128 for our opening song, the third song down from the very top of the page, Yedid Nefesh. page 130 at the very top of the page.
נקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נערייה לו יא נה נה יא נה 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 נה
Now on page 131, Psalm 96 in the middle of the page. We're now to page 132, or Zarua, the last Hebrew paragraph at the bottom of the page. Turn now to page 134, very top of the page. now to page 135, the last Hebrew paragraph in the middle of the page. Turn ahead to Lecha Dodi on page 138. Reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs. And for the final paragraph, we'll rise in body or spirit and face towards the door we entered through. Please be seated here. Please be seated at home. We'll turn now to page 140. Again, very top of page 140.
He's more צדיק תמר יפרח, כארץ בלבנון יזכה. שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינועו בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו. להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, מלוב לטמור.
Are now to the Chati Kaddish on page 144.
יתקדש מרבה, בלמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי.
בחייכנו
חיי דכל בן ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן.
יש מרב
אבא מברך,
להעמיד
עולמות מעמיה יתמרח. יתמרח וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו. לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, להמירה בעלמה, ויאמרו
Amen. We rise and face east as we turn to page 146 for the Baruch Hu. Thank you.
Marechu et Adonai Hamevora.
Please be seated. I invite you to join with me on the bottom of page 149 in English. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
מעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, עריב הרביעי.
Amen.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו מאורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה מאהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד.
Please join with me on the top of page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות לידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Let's read together on the top of page 157 in English. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158. Turn now to page 161, very top.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim Baruch atah
And you should know that they really only just practiced that about 15 minutes before the service. So credit to the two of you. I don't know how you do it. We're now on page 162, very top of the page.
Shabbat, לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת מי נפש, שבת מי נפש, שבת מי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
In a moment, we'll begin the Amidah together on page 164, and I'll invite you to rise in body or spirit. As always, we begin together and then continue silently at our own pace. When you're finished, you may be seated. Again, page 164, and we'll face what we assume is east. Except for Cantor Lauren has to face this way for the break.
Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufi hagid tilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
As we turn to page 371, Shabbat tonight, we begin by thinking of those in our community that are in need of healing. Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Roberta Kyle, Jeff Baker, David Tosher, Jim Cohn, Monique Renee Banks Rathbun, Lindsay Epstein, Dolores Michka, Sylvia Oren, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Audrey Lubo, Chaim Leib, Robert Posner, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollack, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Emunah Chava, Deirdre Klein, Stephanie Skitt, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Raz Brody, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Susan Spruce, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idle Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kossoff, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivya, Peretz Ben Yehuda, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Leah, and Ahava Bat Yakala. If there's anyone here this evening who's thinking of someone that we did not mention and you'd like to mention their names, we're going to start on this side of the room and then work towards the back, and then this side of the room and towards the back. And if you have names to share, just please raise a hand so I make sure I don't miss anyone. I'll invite those watching at home. Please name anyone that you're thinking of this evening at home as well. And we hold all of our loved ones, all of our friends, all of our community who are in need of that healing. We'll hold them in our hearts as Cantor Lauren leads us in the Misha Berach again on page 371.
Strength, who bless the ones before.
Cantor, you can take a little bit of a well-earned break. Shabbat shalom, everyone. All right, I've already lost you. You all seem very sleepy. I'm going to try to wake you up. And tonight's sermon is it's about ice cream, of all things, but not for the reasons we might assume. How many already knows what it is that I'm talking about this week, just out of curiosity? Oh, wow. Okay, Carl, I know. Carl, the journalist in the room, of course, is going to be up on it. The rest of it is really so good. I was going to say, Margaret, as a resident, and Mike, as a resident of the state of Israel, are probably more acutely aware. So I'll just give a little bit of background to what I'm talking about. So earlier this week, if I'm not mistaken, the board that is essentially in charge of running the Ben & Jerry's ice cream company made a rather public proclamation that they would cease to sell Ben & Jerry's ice cream in the, as they referred to it in their description, and in which this is always a charged way of describing things, the occupied territories, in particular in the West Bank. It's less of an issue in Gaza. I don't believe that they're able to sell it in Gaza. So, as with most things, anything that relates to Israel, right, news that comes out immediately, news that comes out the day after, news that comes out 3 days after, oftentimes begins to add additional details and clarifications and what have you. And some of them are semantics. Some of them have to relate to the unique ways in which business operates in the world and who owns what and what this actually means. But for all intents and purposes, let's forget about the particulars of the financial world and who is the parent company and whether or not it's actually Ben & Jerry's making the ice cream or not. These things are really immaterial. What I want to speak about tonight is the absurdity, quite frankly, of everything that has resulted since that announcement. And I'll try, and this is certainly my opinion, but I'll try to explain what I mean by that. So the choice of boycotting and ultimately divesting and sanctioning, right, if we take those letters and acronym and together, they amount to something referred to as BDS. Okay, how many of you are familiar with the movement of BDS? Okay, so some of you, not all of you. This is primarily, although it is not by any means the primary, let's say, pro-Palestinian camp in the world, the ones that are abdicating on behalf of the Palestinian cause, but have become basically in many ways the most active political entity, non-political entity, non-profit, that have pushed primarily through means of, again, divestment and boycott and sanctioning, boycott and divestment and sanctioning, of both the state of Israel proper and of more specifically the territories, depending again who you're speaking to or referring to, really, the West Bank. And so the decision of Ben & Jerry's in this case was largely, we're told, a result of a good amount of action on the part of the BDS movement to convince the board to change their mind. Although, again, as I've read in the last few days, I'm hearing less and less that that's actually the case and that it really is more complicated than that. But ultimately speaking, what we saw take place is a decision by an individual company, one that many of you and many of us may enjoy, who has made a rather seemingly brazen kind of, for lack of a better term, an attack on what we conceive to be the state of Israel. Now, the complication lies that, at least according to their word, the focus is on the West Bank specifically, not the state of Israel proper, not within the Green Line, etc. So my concern is not so much a question of whether boycotting is a proper means of advocating. It is not really an argument to suggest that sanctions and divestment are not necessary and in some cases have proven themselves to be helpful means by which to make changes in the world. However, the choice in this case is rather cynical. And in fact, from what I understand, actually complicates matters in the West Bank, doesn't make them easier by any means. Forgetting that the ice cream in this case is not coming from the United States. It's a licensing out to companies that make it in Israel and sell it in not just in Israeli parts of the country, but also in Arab neighborhoods, Arab supermarkets, and so on. So in essence, by taking this away, it is in effect taking it away not just from the Jews who live in the West Bank, but in fact from many of the Arab population that lives in the West Bank. But again, whatever the decision may be around this, again, a company has the right to make these kinds of decisions. Where I'm mostly concerned, truly, is what has taken place since. And as I said, the level of absurdity in reaction to this, the amount of people who have engaged in this conversation, the amount of people in particular who have become virulent in their arguments over this one particular issue on Facebook, on Twitter, and YouTube, whatever it might be, in people's homes, in synagogues, has gotten to the point where forget the outside world, forget outside of the Jewish community. Within the Jewish community itself, what I have seen happen just on Facebook alone in the last few days has been sickening. Right? Jews calling each other anti-Semites. Jews questioning their commitment to the state of Israel because of ice cream. This is literally where we have gotten to in the discourse. And at this point, what we are in is really a world of self-serving, what they really sort of refer to these days, I think, as, what do they call it, virtue signaling. I don't really like that phrasing. But what you see basically is an argument over, again, this sort of sense that one side is ultimately going to be unquestionably correct, and the other side is evil. And as we said, we're used to sort of looking external for that kind of conversation. But what I saw internally over the last few days has really broken my heart. And as I've talked about many times before, it's not heartbreaking just because of the name calling or the accusations. It's heartbreaking because this is where I see the most engagement on any issue related to Israel is only when somebody is attacking it from the outside. Right? Only when we feel like we have to defend ourselves does the vast majority of our population become energized and connected to the issue. And if this is what we're going to do with that energy, if this is what we're going to do with our resources, if this is what we're going to do with our political influence, is to scream at each other in echo chambers, to decide that we're going to burn ice cream as if that really makes any sense at all. You can just leave it outside in Israel for 5 minutes and it will melt, right? You can't even begin to imagine the amount of human resources and financial resources that have been wasted in the last several days on a meaningless conversation, both from the side of Ben and Jerry's and from the side of those who are fighting in opposition to this decision. Because in essence, what both sides have done is to decide that somehow or another, antagonism is going to solve what is one of the most complicated problems that has existed in human history. That making broad sweeping generalizations about people and places and policies and governments ultimately is self-serving. If, for example, and again, I'm not against the idea of boycotting things when there is a necessity for it, but if, for example, the board of Ben & Jerry's had gotten together and said to themselves, we feel committed to the fact that something is happening in the world that we want to play a positive role in, right? We want to help solve the problem. Could have taken the money that is ultimately coming in from this place and directed those monies to organizations, to people who are working on the ground every single day for peace. Instead, the decision was to take away, to attack, to close off. The moment that that is done, half the people in the room, even the most open-minded people in the room, are suddenly going to close their eyes and their ears. And on the Israeli side of the equation, and our side of the equation, the American Jewish community, if our response, again, is pure catharsis, right? As I said, to throw out ice cream, to say we'll never eat it ever again, to make sure that it's taken out of every kosher supermarket in the country is getting rid of all of this ice cream. Again, nothing positive results from any of this. It is simply another act in a cyclical craziness that we have all bought into. Every single one of us is now part of this mishigas. Every week, every year, just replace this scenario with another one. We've made no progress. And I've been racking my brain trying to think of, what is analogous to this situation? And the first thing that popped into my head, it may not be the most appropriate, but it's the first thing that popped into my head as a student of history, is to think about, believe it or not, World War I and the idea of trench warfare. I don't know how many of you studied World War I carefully or what trench warfare looked like. But it was one of the most absurd parts of human history. You essentially had two groups of people separated by, let's say, a football field, sitting in their trenches, occasionally being told to run at each other with certain death on the other side, and then to celebrate somehow or another these incremental victories, this sense that somehow or another we're winning the war by moving a foot. The reality is that none of these problems, none of these issues will be solved with this kind of mentality. We are in, essentially, a long-standing trench war. We have not moved in either direction in 70 years. This cannot continue. It cannot continue like this. It is a waste of precious time and precious energy. So my sermon tonight is not so much a sermon, but a beseeching of you. And I'm going to borrow the first word from our parsha tomorrow, Ve'et Hanan. The word itself in Hebrew talks about Moshe pleading with God. I'm pleading with us as a people. I'm pleading with us as part of humanity to leave behind the things that don't solve problems, but only really choose and ultimately serve to magnify them, to make them harder, not easier to solve. If every one of us, for example, And it sounds to me like most of you have, thank God, not spent your time on social media over the last few days engaging in this craziness. But should you feel the draw, take the same amount of time and energy that you would have put into it and put it towards something that actually is working towards peace, towards a solution. If you are going to decide that you're going to boycott Ben and Jerry's, God bless you, you're welcome to do so. But can I make a suggestion? Don't go to Haagen-Dazs with your money. Send that money to Yad Yad, right? Send that money to an organization in Israel that is working on the ground to actually solve the problem. Otherwise, all we are doing is playing into a game that has no end, in which we will burn ourselves and each other to the ground. And if any of you think that I'm being hyperbolic, if any of you think that I am, living in some kind of fantasy world, you may be correct. But I will warn each of you, because to be honest with you, other than 2 people, nobody showed up at Tisha B'Av last week. But if you read the book of Lamentations, if you consider the lead up to the destruction of the temple and our exile from Israel, one of the first steps to that exile was not the act of the Babylonians or the Assyrians or the Romans. It was us against each other. It was the moment we started calling each other anti-Semites. It was the moment in which we started to accuse each other of lacking a love for Israel simply because we are looking for a different future for it. You can all have your own politics, you should. You should all have your own beliefs and connections to the state of Israel, and I love you for it. And as I said, you are welcome to decide in any way, shape, or form what you will support and what you won't, what you will boycott and what you will accept. But I ask you to truly consider, what is the role that each of you is playing in this conflict? And believe it or not, each of us has a role to play. And I suspect, and I will put myself at the forefront, I have been wasting a lot of time and a lot of energy on useless things. I do not need, quite frankly, and I think my doctors would agree, I don't need ice cream of any sort. I don't need anything of that nature. I would give up every sweet thing in the world, every beautiful tasting thing, every sunrise and every sunset, if you told me tomorrow there would be an end to the conflict and my family would no longer have to be soldiers in an army in which children wouldn't have to die. None of it is worth what we have put ourselves through. And the reality is, if we continue in the way that we have, this will be the same thing. I will be giving the same sermon 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So if nothing else, for the sake of the Brombergs, when they go back to the state of Israel, let's each of us commit to the idea that loving and supporting takes many forms. And sometimes, most importantly, that form is in the case of challenging and of asking for more, and in some cases even for demanding of more, perhaps even pleading for that. So if you weren't familiar with this story before this Shabbat, I think a good first step would be to go home and to read. Read not just one article, but several. Try to understand as best as you can, not what is happening with the ice cream, but what is happening in the country. What is happening with the people? What is happening with us? If we, this wonderful group of dedicated people, if we can't do it, what hope ultimately is there? And as you know me, as Heschel said, I'm an optimist against my better judgment in best cases. And I have seen remarkable things change. I believe that there is a possibility different from what we see. And I think it's going to take true leadership. It's going to take vision, and it's going to take a break from the real, true absurdity of what we have become in this conversation. And with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and you'll tell me if you think otherwise afterwards, for sure. I'll welcome Cantor Lauren back to the Bima, and I'll invite us to rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page, and we face east towards our beloved Yerushalayim. Again, page 586 at the very bottom of the page.
Shalom Asayu Kimei Haratzot V'lo Asayu Kimishpachot Ha'adam Shalom Asayu Kimei V'lo Ha'inu K'vo Ha'monam Anatu Korim U'mishpachim U'modim Lifnei Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
I'll invite those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We remember first those who've passed in our community in recent months. Miles Ambrose, Morris Dickstein, Fred Eber, Sandra Furman, Evelyn Gelb, Lucy Gladstone, Phyllis Katz, Jeanette Kopp, Morty Lynn, Jerry Monroe, Madge Judith Parcher, Steve Popkin, Danielle Lisa Rigg, Geraldine Rosen, Harriet Roth, Paul Silver, Marlise Silverberg, Blanche Sklar, Rita Sandra Snyder, Drone Strong Tangzilius, Virginia Tizer, and Ann Weiss. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Felicia Abraham, Lisbeth Adler, Ludwig Bergman, Cecile Busgang, Rose Schwatzky, E.L. Doctorow, Samuel Fichtelberg, Russ Fearman, Abraham Finkelstein, Ruth Gold, Ralph Goldblatt, Max Goldman, Adele Hyman, Ann Giroux, Seth Kaplan, Richard Carl, Richard Katz, Alan Baruch Klopman, Anthony Kiprios, Joan Levine, Meyer Levine, Moreno Harav, Rabbi George B. Lieberman, Catherine Millman, Dr. Martin Protel, Mickey Ritvo, Barry Rosen, Louis Rubin, Carol Silberg, Esther Shapiro Weinberg, Lillian Wolgamuth, and Faye Zalkas. Does anyone else have a name of someone for whom you're saying Kaddish tonight that you'd like to share? In solidarity with all those remembering their loved ones, we rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 598, and the mourners join me in the Kaddish at the top of the page. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, la'galav zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam le'almei almayim. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, V'yitpar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei D'Kudsha, Berichu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbchata v'nechamata, da'amiran alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael.
Amen.
Livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Okay, please be seated. Seated at home if you're standing. Good Shabbos, everybody. Shalom. Shalom. Oh, I got to stop giving more somber sermons. I think it takes a little bit of the air out of the room, but I'll keep doing it. It is my charge, that is for sure. Before I forget to make this announcement, please as a reminder, if you can, when you leave the room, bring your prayer books with you. It will make Baba Josie's life infinitely easier than having to search through the many pews. You can just bring it and place it right back where you found them. So, a few important announcements. Shabbat morning services will be held tomorrow morning in the chapel. Again, the entrance for the chapel is on this side of the building. We'll begin at 9:30, always live streamed on our website, YouTube, and Facebook channels. We also will have archived versions available shortly after viewing. Also a reminder that Torah study on Zoom will be at 12 o'clock tomorrow as well. This Sunday at 11 o'clock, our book group meets virtually, facilitated by Ruth Joseph. And later in the day, we hope, weather permitting, that we'll have our talent show. I know Bob's been waiting patiently for that, but it may rain, unfortunately. So keep an eye out for email. We'll make a decision, sometime mid-morning. Assuming that it happens, again, 5 o'clock Sunday at the little, not so little, greenery right next to the Christ Episcopal Church on 114. I guess by that point it's Division? No, Hampton Street. So if you don't know where to go, please let us know. Bring a chair or something to sit on, and again, hopefully we will have it. If it does rain, we'll have to cancel and we will reschedule for a future date. I should just step back in time for 1 second. Anybody who's signed up, how many signed up for the cruise with me and Cantor Lauren tomorrow? Excellent. Very excited. So just as a warning, Sag Harbor has been notoriously bad for parking for a while. Saturday nights can be truly brutal. Hopefully you'll find something closer. If worse comes to worse, you can. You can park in the Whalers lot here. Just leave a little piece of paper on your windshield that says Temple Adas Israel member. It's a bit of a walk, so it's not ideal, but worst comes to worst. Just please make sure you give extra time because from what we understand from the captain, 7:30, and we set sail. So this may be the first and last time that the rabbi ever gets on a boat. So we'll see how that goes. But Cantor Lauren's more seafaring than I am, so we'll have a good time. We'll do some Abdallah. We'll schmooze a little bit. I think there's some wine and cheese and all those good things. So we're looking forward to that very much. Just a mention of a few other things going on this week. Niddah Mitzvah will meet on Monday at 11:30. Contact Andrea Fagan for more information if you'd like to join. The Social Justice Committee will meet on Zoom at 5 o'clock, Alyssa. Good. Also, the Musar Practice Group at 7 o'clock with Myra as well. Reminder that this coming Thursday, July 29th at 7 o'clock, I will be joined by our fellow member and wonderful man all around, Dr. Stephen Rosen, who's going to help me in a conversation on religion and science, prophecy and prediction that'll be moderated by Judy Klinghoffer. So again, this will be on Zoom at 7 o'clock on July 29th. Just make sure that you register so you get the link. Also a reminder that Shabbat by the Bay, again, hopefully the weather will hold. It was really a wonderful service earlier this evening. So we'll welcome everybody back to Havens Beach again at 5:30. And if you want to, join us a little bit earlier at 5 o'clock for a little bit of schmoozing and a Tikkun Olam project. Today was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll show you the results next week. And it really is quite lovely. Also a reminder that our August calendar should be coming out very shortly, if it hasn't already, so please pay attention to all the things we've got going on there. And before we close out anything, to wish our wonderful Ira a happy birthday. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
So we don't have a Kiddush anymore to sing you happy birthday, but we love you very much, Ira, and we wish nothing but Ad Mea Esrim until 120, they tell you, Ira. So you got a long way to go. Okay, long way to go. I'm sure you and Bonnie will celebrate greatly tonight, and we'll reserve for next year when we can have kiddushes again to celebrate you and all that. But we wish you really a happy birthday. I think those were all of my announcements. Did I miss anything? Anybody? All right. Well, I'm sure I missed something, but we welcome, of course, all of our friends who are watching on the stream. We'll give the virtual Oneg one more week to see whether it takes. If not, we'll wish it a fond farewell. I'm not sure it's quite, but it's very lovely because it's a good excuse for Cantor Lauren to see her grandfather. So if nothing else, we'll continue that. Tell him we'll set that up. No problem. But with all of that said, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. I hope I'll get a chance to see you tomorrow. And Cantor, we're going to do a closing song before.
Yes.
Oh, say shalom Rama, Muyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imu amen. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
That's the kind of enthusiasm that I love, right? That's some excellent. Thank you, Mark. I know you love stuff. Beautiful. We'll rise in your spirit as we turn to page 123 for the Kiddush. Again, page 123. You're welcome to join me if you choose. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher
kidshanu b'mitzvot
v'midotav avanu
v'shabbat
v'kodsho me'ahava u'v'ratzon
hilanu zikaron
Aseh v'reishit Ki hu yom tefilah למקראי קודש, זכר לתחיית מצרים. אנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת,
מכל
העמים לשבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון, הנחתנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. Amen.
Chaim, Shabbat Shalom. Chaim, friends on the stream, good Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Each other again. Those messages. I've read the article forward, I've read each of the Israeli papers. There was one actually really interesting one in the, I don't know if you call it smart that smart Andrew, keep my eye
Great music there, man. Great music. Got some room. I'll see you tomorrow, but I'll be late. I have a thing till 9:30. Okay. Well, I'll definitely do it. Me and Howard.
So, well, I actually know, I wish that I could think of it as being much more relevant, but I just can't turn that back. You were just, but I know that this is huge, but these all different people and stuff. And now it's every part of this, right? So educated. Precisely, exactly. And that is the example. Of course, we studied our own history.
Well, my bad side.
But you know, that's why
There's a work.
right. Precisely.
And then my cousin was also.
That's right. It's just the needle on it. Well, exactly. I think it actually genuinely probably drove you to your use of lesson. So
She did not drive, but we did take the subway.
So, that's, but it's hard, and for generations back, I realized that, take a 20-year-old college student, right? That means that they were born in 2000, 2001. They have no concept, right? No concept of life was over. They have no concept of a life probably was like this. Right? They don't remember the bombings. They don't remember, right, the 90s. They don't remember the first or the second responder. They don't even know that it exists. So if you start the conversation in 2000, that's part of the challenge. But again, nobody likes to read. Nobody likes to argue. And so as a result, nobody ever asked the question, who do you guess on the equation said, well, why is all this happening? Right? Because the only answer that's going to come up with is, some sort of evil or tool. But it's just like, if you were getting on a bus and are going to a pizza shop and somebody walks into the desk strap that's full of explosives,
Is that this?
a woman or a child.
What?
But my brother, that was in 2000, but earlier than that, my brother was in the year in 90, I want to say 95 or 96. And thank God he decided not to go out with his friends went to one of the clubs where somebody just drove by and sprayed the Right, so the question is like, how does Netanyahu empower second? Right, it's not an accident. And the problem is like, you never hear, you just don't hear just look, this is an excellent question. Sharon surveys, I guess. I don't think they have a political agency.
I bet the forward has an article.
I was going to say,
I think the forward has an article, but they're so rational.
First one, the Kofuni was the one I was going to say. As a child, that was the one where they all tried to go. I know what this is. Don't try to tell me this is an ice cream sandwich. I know. There has never been a better time in the world to be lactose intolerant. There are 700 varieties of not milk these days, including milk that's lactose. So you're in business, and live with all about the oat milk stuff.
Me too, it's so good.
It's very good. You know what all it is? It's if you ever ate crackling oat bran and you put milk on the crackling oat bran, that's what you have left at the end of it is milk that tastes like oats. Yes, probably. But I like the Oatly guy. He seems like a good person. Oh, sorry, Sharon. These are the Proverbs. Sharon's one of our newer members. Russia, there you go. It's harder than that sometimes. You should know the Proverbs are really they're our heart. They are our true heart, and they're in Israel most of the time.
I know, and you were in Israel for 22 months.
Oh, geez, I can't even imagine. Oh, I know.
You didn't want to be here.
That's the thing about it is, right? According to the rabbis, right? The rabbis say the whole reason all that bad stuff happens, right? Really, the prophets probably maybe some of it. Because of us, And it's not that simple. It's never that simple. But at the same time, I don't think we can be helped by government that you guys must be living the second day. Also because of expats, right? I'm sure there's like, and it's of course humorous because all it takes is to be a second generation, then you can call yourself solid. When in reality, none of them should be called themselves solid, like not even remotely. Unless you grew the country when it wasn't a country, that's a very specific kind of thing. But it's like, it's half a book. This is not, it's
Yeah.
Oh, the soda stream.
Papa says you look great.
Right, because all the Palestinian workers lost their jobs. I mean, that's yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I'll let him know. Okay, sounds good. I will. Yes, yes. Okay, hold on. Hello, how are you?
Apparently not. Yes, but the truth is that there's a lot of challenge, which is interesting though, because the party of God, part of the mandate is really largely a representation of it wasn't originally, but it seems to be sort of I will share with you
all right. Okay.
Look, I think to be honest with you, and I've felt this way for years, right? Sadat flying to speak to the Knesset is the sea changing event that doesn't get nearly enough recognition. Right? It doesn't. That simple act, getting on here, flying and speaking, right? Unfortunately, cost him his life, right? But he knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. I think the reality now is the time where it actually has to go in the other direction, right? It's like if you had the sitting prime minister went to Ramallah, for example, right, and restarted the negotiations and says, I'm here in your place, in your capital, right, and I'm here because I want to make it that, and I want to help make it that, but you have to work with us and all of that. Who knows? Who knows? But that would take a level of courage. It's hard these days, right? Because Sadat didn't have Twitter, didn't have Facebook, right? He didn't have people who could shoot him out from under his legs before he even had a chance to do it. And that's the real challenge, I think. But I think Ben has a career to be able to get away with that. It's interesting. I've been waiting to see kind of like what his people have done in response, right? Because, many of them felt that he had sold them out and all these things, and I'm sure that many of them still feel that way, and they may have gone over to the other lunatics, even worse guys. But it seems to me like actually, if there was going to be some massive exodus, actually, if you don't mind, that'd be great. Bonnie, just give me a second. I'm just going to bring this stuff downstairs. And Mike, thanks for that. You can follow me.
The live stream is still on.
What is that?
The live stream is still on.
Yeah, it turns off in a couple minutes. The reason I didn't last week is because I turned the automatic thing off and then I just left it in manual mode, and that's why I was not looking at it. Anybody want to know what's going on here?
I've been to Sag Harbor before, but this is my first time seeing Lauren do the service live. Really? In person, yeah. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's like that's crazy.
Well, I mean, she's seen it live, but in a different sense. Like when I would do it in her dining room.
Yeah, it was live.
Yeah.
I was sort of identifying with you because our daughter also is she's not an invested cancer, but she's a cancer soloist.
Oh, where?
She's also around.
Where?
In Jerusalem.
Oh,
She went to Hebrew College.
Oh.
And we had.
What congregation?
Well, she was with a congregation in Reading, Pennsylvania, but when she made Aliyah, there was no congregation for her.
Okay.
So she made Aliyah as the coordinator of the program for the rabbinical students of Hebrew College.
Oh, wow.
However, that job was terminated when she had COVID.
Oh.
So now she does voice coaching, and also she's doing a program. You'll have to look it up because she can describe it better than I can. But she's founded an organization called Fat Talk, and it has to do with, the bottom line is it has to do with body.
One of my friends actually just reposted something of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So she's like,
okay. Wow, that's awesome. I just thought it was like the other day one of my friends was saying about Fat
good.
Torah, and I've never heard it before, and I really liked what it had to say.
Yeah, good.
Wow.
So she's based in Jerusalem. She made Aliyah about 7 years ago, and we made Aliyah 3 years ago. 3 years ago. So anyway, I enjoyed sort of thinking about how good it feels.
Yes,
to
it
sit
does
on
feel
the
good.
bench
It was like,
and have your daughter perform more. I guess it's not supposed to do performances, but very exciting.
Yeah, I have one extra.
What's that?
I have one extra.
You have an extra.
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
oh, it's birthday, yes.
Okay.
Okay, good projects.
Where?
Short green
Oh,
projects.
birthday project, yeah.
What she says, she's kind of around the corner.
Yeah.
Let me go around this. Sarah, you can find out through. Oh, no, you're perfect. Right.
August, I met.
No, you're good to go.
Some of the,
Let me. Yes.
she was on Barber Place in Brooklyn
In
Heights.
Brooklyn Heights, right.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go through that door right there and look down, you'll see that there's.
That's the one that used to be Brooklyn, because I-
Yeah, it used to be that way. Howard was pushing for
Okay.
that, but that is problematic.
Which was an hour and 45.
No, it is. It is confusing.
So if they meet each other in a week, and they can see.
I'll take it actually, you guys, you'll have an easier time coming out for that door. Yeah. We'll go out to that door. I'm just gonna turn around. Usually that exact close legs, but I'll get you guys in front of it. All right.
Get out. Sure. Rabbi says it's easier to go.